Hi! It's Sylvia here with Vintage Kitchen Vixen, where I share tips for simple living, creating memorable gatherings, and preparing wholesome and traditional meals with a vintage twist. And today I am going to talk about oysters. Have you ever been to an oyster party? I'm going to guess no. Most people I know haven't, but it's something that my in-laws have almost every year, and it's an event that I've really come to cherish. I'm going to be going over some best practices of throwing one of your own. So first off, oysters are typically in season in the Burr months: September, October, November, December, the Burr months. And I'm not going to talk about the different kinds of oysters that are available. There are so many. The ones that I typically use are Malpec or Lucky Limes. I don't generally spend a lot of money on oysters, but that doesn't stop me from enjoying them. When you're throwing an oyster party, you want to have some different fixings available. The purists will insist that nothing is better than an oyster as is. It tastes like the sea. And I can see it, but I like to add a little something to my oysters. And I'm talking about oysters on the half shell here. If you haven't had them, you should definitely try them one of these days. Some people aren't a fan of oysters, and that's fine. You can still invite them over to your oyster party, but be sure to serve something that they can eat. And when I'm hosting an oyster party, I like to have different options available. Some of the things I like to have available range from a green salad with a zippy dressing, a cheese board. You could do a soup, whether that's an oyster soup or an oyster chowder, but at an oyster party, oysters are the main event. I personally like oysters a heck of a lot more with the squeeze of lemon, or even a mignonette, which is kind of like a vinaigrette. So it's some kind of acid and some of your favorite seasonings. So I'll be showing you how to make a couple of mignonette today that you can serve alongside your oysters. Some people like dashing on a little bit of Tabasco sauce on their oyster, and I find that that overpowers the oyster. So I've heard some people like using a little wee bit of sriracha. I haven't tried that, so I can't speak to it, but I have tried oysters with vodka, and that's quite, it's like having a shot with an oyster. It's pretty fun. You can also have fun with the cocktails. I've heard that some people like saving the oyster brine, so if with the oysters, and I haven't tested this, I plan on testing it real soon, but if you drain the oysters after you shuck them, shucking is when you open up the oyster. If you shuck the oysters and then drain the juices, it gives the oyster the opportunity to replump itself, and it'll make it even more juicier. So instead of throwing out the brine, you can save it and mix it into a cocktail like a Bloody Mary or a Bloody Caesar. I know some restaurants or bars, they have oyster Caesars available where your Caesar or your Bloody Mary is actually served with an oyster on top, and I think that's wild. So that would be something that would be fun to serve at an oyster party. My preferred beverage when I'm enjoying oysters is either a glass of off-dry wine or a glass of bubbles. So yes, when you're serving oysters, I would say having a couple of things that your guests can put on top of their oysters is key. Another thing you might want to consider grabbing yourself are oyster plates. It's just an easy way to serve the oysters. Another thing you could do is get a pan and just put a bunch of ice on there to keep the oysters cold. But I like the oyster plates because they have these little grooves. I don't know if you can see. Can you see? They have these little grooves, and they just sit really well. Maybe you don't want to have an oyster party, maybe you just want to enjoy oysters as an appetizer, the first course of a dinner. You can give everybody a plate of oysters and then cross your fingers and hope that everybody likes oysters on the half shell. Lastly, before we hop into it, if you are new here, welcome. I'm so excited that you are joining me for your first episode of Vintage Kitchen Vixen. If you're enjoying this video, I really hope you consider subscribing so that you can always follow along. If you're on YouTube, remember to hit that bell notification. But if you are new here, we are about to go into silent film mode, and we're going to do that right now. advantage of being the one who shucks the oysters is being able to do quality control tests. So you don't want anybody getting a bad oyster. And I don't think there's anything sadder than a bad oyster. Usually you can smell it and then the first thing you want to do is discard it and get it as far away from you as you possibly can. Sometimes you do get a bad oyster, and if that happens, spit it out and have a drink of wine. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Vintage Kitchen Vixen. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, I hope you like this video, leave a comment if you'd like to. And if you haven't done so already, I hope you subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that bell notification so that you never miss an episode. And lastly, share with somebody who likes oysters. So that's it for me today. I put out 2 new videos a week, so I will be seeing you soon. Bye! Oysters. And I'm talking about oysters on the half shell here. If you haven't had them, you should definitely try them one of these days. If you're not a fan, that's okay. I get it. I'm not a fan of corn dogs. That's okay. I'm not a fan of hot dogs, and I'm not saying you are, but